the Red Willow Creek. It is the main source of drinking, cleaning, and cooking water for families that live here. It's also the main source of irrigation water for our farmers. It does flow all year long. It freezes over during the winter but flows underneath, and it is a tributary to the Rio Grande. Now this water derives from a glacial lake located 13 miles into the Taos Mountain. This lake is called Blue Lake, and Blue Lake is central to our native religion here at Taos Pueblo. It's kind of like our church. Back in 1906, when President Theodore Roosevelt was creating the national park system, his administration took away 48,000 acres of land from our people, including Blue Lake, and turned it into a national park for public use. At that time, we were unable to hunt, fish, or even gather firewood inside of our lands without a permit from the federal government. Also, we have various sacred sites in the mountain that we were unable to use in privacy. And so this prompted our tribal leaders to engage in a legal battle against the federal government for our land back. So for over 50 years, our Taos Pueblo leaders traveled in and out of Washington, D.C. in order to convince national leaders to support our cause, that we are the original caretakers of these lands. It was also noted in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that the Kingdom of Spain recognized Taos Pueblo's sovereignty over Blue Lake and the surrounding wilderness area. And so, in that pursuit, we gained a lot of support from advocacy groups across the country in the name of religious freedom. And in 1970, President Richard Nixon signed the Blue Lake Wilderness Act, which returned all 48,000 acres of land back to our people, including Blue Lake. And so that set a tribal precedent because at that time, no other tribal nation had ever received any land back from the federal government. So Taos Pueblo became known as the first tribal nation to do so. Now, Nixon did something good for us anyway. There's nothing bad about Nixon here. But when our lands did get returned to us, we promised to keep wilderness in its most pristine state. That's the only way that our way of life can thrive and survive. And so as it stands today, Taos Pueblo owns a little more than 100,000 acres of land. This does include the entire Taos Mountain, the hills that you see behind the south side structure here. We also own land in and around the town of Taos that we've recently started to buy back. And we also own a huge tract of land out by the Gorge Ridge area where we reintroduced bighorn sheep about 20 years ago. And so we have a tribal entity, it's a government entity within our community. They are called the War Chief staff. The War Chief and his staff are a staff of 12 men. They're the ones who maintain all of our tribal lands and natural resources. So the War Chief and his staff, they're patrolling our borders at any given time throughout the year or day to make sure we don't have poachers or trespassers. They're the ones who maintain all of our ceremonial trails in our mountain. They're the ones who maintain our water situation here with our sandbags. They were here the other day just laying more sandbags down. So our War Chief staff, their job is 24/7. It is considered a high honor to be on the War Chief staff because it is our traditional form of government that was in structure prior to colonization. Now on the other end of things, we have our governor's staff. The governor and his staff is considered our primary leader for our community. So the governor and his staff, they take care of our church activities, all of our day-to-day activities within the village here. They also represent us as a people at the federal and state level on all things that have to do with the modern world, like education, housing, healthcare, our judicial system, different things like that. And so our governor and his staff are also a staff of men. Our governor and our War Chief staff, they're the ones who basically pull together to run our community and to meet the needs of our people. They are chosen by our tribal council once a year. Our tribal council is a council of 40 to 50 elderly men who have been past leaders. So we are a patriarchal society here at Taos Pueblo. That's all I'll say about that today. But our government style has been recognized not only by the Kingdom of Spain in the form of leadership canes. King Philip in the 1600s gifted our Pueblo and communities, recognizing our sovereignty over our people and our way of life with leadership canes, but also by President Abraham Lincoln in the 1860s, who also gifted our people leadership canes, recognizing our sovereignty over our ancestral lands. And so, these leadership canes are carried by our tribal government all throughout the year. So our governor has one in his home, our war chief, and all of the workers that are under him. It is considered a high honor, like I said. So our motto is that our tribal leaders, their first job is the people of the land. And it is a huge sacrifice. So we are seeing a lot of community shift though in terms of women leadership, and so we'll see if it happens in my lifetime. And so our here, like I said, is going to be the epicenter of tribal and traditional life. There is a certain boundary where we cannot cross in order to integrate any type of modern things. So all around the village area, you'll see the village wall. It used to be about 10 feet high at some point to protect us from raiding tribes. However, now it serves as a cultural boundary between what's allowed inside the wall and what we allow beyond the wall. Now, outside of the wall, you saw some of these more modern homes. They have, satellites on top of their houses, or we can have hot tubs if we want them. But beyond the wall is where we continue our modern life, right, as Pueblo people. And so outside of the wall, we have modern programming like our tribal police station. We have a clinic. We have a tribal school where they teach K through 8th grade. After 8th grade, we all go to the town of Taos for high school. We also have various programs across the spectrum. So for example, we have a Tiwa language program. Tiwa is the language that we speak here at my home. We speak the northern dialect of Tiwa. Tiwa is unwritten. It is an oral language. It is the only language we speak in our ceremonies and in our cultural activities. So as tribal members, it's a huge, huge incentive for us to learn our language so we can keep these lifeways going. During the 2020 census, our Tiwa language program decided to hop on the trend, and they surveyed the whole community in terms of our fluency. I'm happy to say that Taos Pueblo has a 75% Tiwa language fluency, and that's considered huge as opposed to other tribal nations who are at risk for language loss. Where we're seeing the gap is with our elders and our little ones. And so our Tiwa language program works all year long, very creatively, to try to find ways to fill that gap. And so it is a family responsibility as well for us to teach our children the language.
Can you speak to us in Tiwa?
Yeah, so we still have our native name ceremonial practice. So shortly after a new baby is born, maybe weeks after, the family gathers to give the baby names in Tiwa. And so we can have 10, 20, 30 names if we want them. But the name that sticks with you out of all those names that you hear that day is your name, even though you have other names. So my name is Butterfly Flower, and that's Ilmoya Papu in Tiwa. Yeah, thank you. And I'll just give you a little bit more. So I have two sons. They're 9 and 11. My oldest son, 12. Oh sorry. It does. Wait, and boys. They're both boys. Anyways. And so my oldest son, his name given to him by his grandpa is Alpha Bena. Alpha is the stars. And then Bena or Bana is the deer. So his name is Star Deer. Alpha Bena. And then my youngest son is Tiu Daka. So Tiona means eagle. Daka is hawk. And so their names fit them because Officer Fena is very reserved and calm and patient, and Tiu Daka is a firecracker. He's always here and there and talking like 100 miles an hour. And so it's really like part of our lifeways to believe in that, that we embody our names, and it means something to us and those who came before us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
Can your boys speak the language?
They're getting there. Unfortunately for a lot of us, English was some of our first languages. We're only maybe 2 generations out from the federal Indian boarding school era where our languages were literally beaten out of our elders, right? And so thankfully I come from a family lineage that speaks the language every day and won't speak English to my kids. And so that's cool, and so I'm always like translating, which is okay, but they're getting there, and that's my goal as their mom, to make sure that they know the language, because that's what my parents gave to me, my grandparents, so.